Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. Here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. It's the weekend, kids. Yeah, a lot going on too. I wanted to make you guys aware. I am not just a speaker of things. I am a doer of things. You know, as I have said at times when I have not necessarily been in a PG or a rated G frame of mind. A lot of people talk, you know what? I try to do, you know what? They talk, I do. So, had a couple meetings here the last couple days involving some NIL stuff. And I'm not going to sit here and have some big, long, drawn-out thing about NIL. But going to have some opportunities for you to get something in return for your NIL dollars as it relates to baseball. And when we get some things for football and basketball, we'll do that too. It's kind of a unique situation. Both individuals, one person I've known for a long time, has some items that we're going to put up for sale. It's a once-in-a-lifetime deal. It was a limited edition thing about 30 years ago. And if you've been around, you may know what I'm talking about. But we have found some old inventory that is not available anywhere else. And so it's going to be sold through the Bulldog Initiative. Met with Charlie today. And we'll have more details soon. But this is going to be available for purchase. And there are multiple quantities, but there are limited quantities. It's going to be sold online through the Bulldog Initiative. And if you're a big Mississippi State baseball fan, it's an item that you're going to want. It's an item that you're going to cherish. There are only about 600 of these that were even put into production. And we have what's left of the remaining inventory that went unpurchased 30 years ago. It's been hiding under a bed in a guest room, wrapped up safely all these years. So I want to put it on your radar just because once it goes live, we'll do an article, we'll push that on Gene's page, we'll put it to socials, but you're going to have to act very quickly. I'm just going to let you know now. There's also another thing that we're talking about. I don't want to put too many details out there. Something else, baseball NIL related, kind of in the same vein, but not so limited. Let's just say that. So that has taken up a good bit of time last couple days because you know how it is. It's not just the meeting itself. It's kind of planning your day around the meeting. It's like, well, I don't want to get too deep into this because I don't want to start recording the show and have to stop and then go to a meeting, come back, and then you get back, you got to tend to the dogs, and there's all kind of stuff that goes along with that. Got to find something to eat, and so that's kind of where we are. So again, I just want to let you know. We'll have some information on the first fundraiser here in the next few days. That's the plan. And I don't want to speak for Charlie, who is a saint of a man, to take all this challenge on to for the betterment of Mississippi State. And so I just, when I can, I like to help Charlie, which in turn helps Mississippi State. I know many of you feel the same way. You want to do things that benefit Mississippi State. But here, instead of somebody just saying, hey, we really need you to give, we're going to give you a chance to buy something, a very unique item. And again, multiple quantities, but limited quantities that will kind of give you some incentive. So you kind of get a little more for your money, right? You get a timeless, limited edition item to put in your home. So rather than just getting a receipt or a thank you email, you get something a little bit cooler. We did a rock show one time too. May do that stuff again too. You never know. I may just record a single with some friends, and we'll just drop that and let all the proceeds go to NIL. You never know. You just never know what we're going to do. But I think it's one of those things too. I am a person. I know this about myself. I can't be on the sidelines, right? And that's one of the things. It really kind of got me motivated again about that sort of stuff. Like as we work through this portal stuff and like the Dave Mershon stuff. Everybody's like, well, hey, shouldn't NIL take care of that? Well, who takes care of NIL? Until they get all this new model settled and the school can kind of take over, and you're still going to have some opportunities to give, and you should if you can. Right now, we take care of it. And so rather than just kind of sit back and say, well, NIL should do that, and NIL should do that, again, I think we have to be doers of the word and not just speakers only. That's my feeling, and that's biblical. So that's kind of where we are. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I want to make sure that you're aware something cool is coming here in a few days. And again, you're going to have to act fast. All right? Hey, let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show, and I'm already getting a hankering. I had Bulldog Burger Company earlier this week. I'm getting a hankering for some more. The wife had the chicken bacon ranch sliders. That's a great lunch portion. And for some of you, maybe it's a dinner portion too. Very filling, right? And she got the onion rings to go with it. I got a burger. I'm trying to remember which one I got, but I had fries too, which my dogs are very happy about because I can't finish them. I mean, the portions are so substantial at Bulldog Burger Company. Nor do I need to finish them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm getting older. But one of the things I love about Bulldog Burger Company is integrity. There is such integrity with what they do. A lot of people are giving you less and charging you more. That's just not the case at Bulldog Burger Company. The portions are substantial. The service is outstanding. The selection, second to none. 3 great locations to serve you. University Drive here in Stark Vegas. Gloucester Street there in Tupelo. Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. And we need the world to be a more beautiful place. Get that chocolate shake to go. Make the whole thing an event, right? You're not just stopping for lunch. You're going to Bulldog Burger Company, right? And so that requires a little bit of a commitment on your part. And, here's the thing, too. It's so great and so filling. You know what? You might be able to even skip dinner. Just kind of call it for what it is. Yeah, you get more than your money's worth at Bulldog Burger Company. And there are so few people in places today that can say that. But it's true for Bulldog Burger Company. Should be absolutely destination one when it's your night out. You can go have an adult beverage, have a glass of wine, get a couple cold beers with your friends, or just make it a family night. No matter what your needs are, they can be met at Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet, M-E-A-T. All right. A lot of football stuff to talk about today. The SEC preseason media poll is out. Now, as you guys know, there are a lot of times that I'll come out and I say, guys in media are crazy. Now, first thing I'm going to tell you, a lot of people that vote in this poll really don't do any of their homework. But this year, you're not going to hear me just kind of blasting the media that I'm a part of. I just don't go to media days. Justin Frommer and David Murray went for us. David loves to go. It's like his Super Bowl in some respects. David loves to go. Dave's been doing this forever and a day. So Dave likes to go out there and kind of glad hand with the rest of the media and see some friends. It's about the only time you see them, right? Because even when we see people when we're covering a ball game, it's a work day. You know what I'm saying? So this is a little bit different. Yes, it's a work day, but there is some time to kind of visit and hobnob a little bit. Dave really enjoys that. And I've shared with you guys, as long as I have a website, a publication, a media entity, David Murray is going to have a place to work. That as long as I am alive, and of course, if I die before him, I hope that Dana will keep him on. But so Dave and Justin went and voted, and so there are a lot of people, of course, that kind of go and they don't. It's not a big thing for them, and just to kind of share that with you again, how some people take this poll so lightly. Vanderbilt, 2 votes as the SEC champion. 2 votes. And so you got to take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt. You and I both know Vanderbilt is the worst team in this conference. And the fact that anybody could go up there and vote them as the SEC champion in preseason, it's disrespectful to the poll. It's disrespectful to the rest of the media. And I think in some respects it's disrespectful to Vanderbilt. It's kind of like you're having a joke at their expense. That's not a legitimate vote. And I think these votes should be transparent. I think you ought to be able to vote, and I think the SEC should have a list of how everybody voted. I think it should be an online thing. You go in there, you make your vote, boom. When the poll is announced the next day, it'd be a good media opportunity too. right? I just believe in transparency. I mean, we're not voting in the presidential election here. I mean, you're voting about college football. Why would you be ashamed to make that vote public, right? I voted I'm a Heisman voter. As soon as the Heisman was announced, I shared how I voted. And so I think everybody should live that way. And I think if you have integrity in how you report, you should be okay with some public scrutiny when it comes to these polls. That's how I feel. Surely I'm in the minority. And maybe they just don't want to take the time to set up the infrastructure to share all that stuff. Maybe. But I think you as the fan probably deserve to know who voted Vanderbilt number 2. There were 2 votes, right? So running through the 2024 preseason SEC championship voting. Number 1, and it should come as no surprise, Georgia with 165 points. Texas, 27. We've talked about on the show, Texas should have a really good year this year. The schedule is very favorable. Alabama, 12. I think some people voted for them out of habit. I think it also is one of those things, too. I mean, Kalen DeBoer, those guys, inherit a good team, obviously. But to expect them to contend in year 1, maybe asking a bit much. And then 4th was Ole Miss with 4 points. And I suspect that's probably some Ole Miss people voting. I've never voted Mississippi State to win the SEC, just so you know. I've never done that. Again, Vanderbilt 2, LSU 2. And isn't that interesting? That Vanderbilt and LSU get the same number of points in the poll. And I think some people may be sleeping on LSU just a little bit. I do expect them to take a step back, but they got some talent on that roster. And then the last vote, South Carolina got 1 point. And so again, some people not taking the process seriously, which maybe suggests to all of us that we shouldn't take it seriously either. Certainly not too seriously, right? All right, let's get to the projected order of finish. As you guys know, there is no East or West divisions anymore. If there were, Mississippi State would be picked last in the West again. And I don't agree with that. But here we go. We'll start at the top. Your first place team, as it should be, Georgia. Number 2 is Texas, and it's a lot closer vote than you think. Georgia with 33-30 points, and then Texas 30-41. But closer to Texas than Texas was to Georgia is Alabama, almost 2,900 points there. And then there's Ole Miss. And a really solid 4th place finish in the balloting for Ole Miss, too. Over 450 points higher than LSU, who comes in 5th. Missouri, 6th. And you say, but Steve, that's kind of a surprise. Missouri was the best story in the Southeastern Conference last year. I mean, you never know week to week whose season Missouri would have a chance to go wreck. It's a great job by Eli Drinkwitz and his staff. Great job. And then, of course, they return several pieces, including Brady Cook. Missouri's not going to be a joke, guys, and they won't sneak up on anybody this year. But Drinkwitz is a guy that knows how to coach offense. So, interesting. And they edge out Tennessee. And I'm sure the Volunteer fans are incensed by that. How dare the media pick Missouri over Tennessee? I think when you look at what Tennessee has coming back, and Hype always has a good offense, and you look at what Missouri does, I just think Missouri, you look at that team, so you know what, they return their quarterback, that'll be in good shape. It's interesting. Just behind Tennessee is Oklahoma with 2,022 points. And then this is where it gets kind of interesting. And this is where you're going to have, we'll look back at this, at the end of the year and say, oh, they were so wrong. Because this is where it really gets unpredictable. A lot of people that are our contemporaries. Oklahoma with 2,022 points. And then well behind them, and Mike Elko and those guys, I think are going to be a little worse than a lot of people project. 1,684 points. And then Auburn, and of course, Auburn's going to go as far as Peyton Thorne can carry them. And some of the comments coming out of Media Days, too, is like, Peyton Thorne was good, but because of the fact the receivers couldn't get open, the timing of the play was off and off. Now, Hugh Freeze is going to go back to doing the play calling. And I don't care who does the play calling. When you don't have the talent you need to compete in this league, you cannot out-scheme a talent-deficient roster. We know, right? We know. We've been there, right? As great as Dan Mullen was, and there were some years that Dan's coaching, probably some of the better years he had as a coach were years we won 7 and 8 games. I go back at 2012 and 2013 year. I mean, my goodness. I mean, you go back and look at those rosters, all due respect to everybody that was a part of that. You go back and look, we didn't have a lot of stars. We thought we did. We hoped we did, but we didn't. And as great as Dan Mullen was as an innovator offensively, and as great as a coach and offensive mind that he was, he couldn't overcome some of the limitations of the roster. And I think that's where Auburn is too. I know they went out and spent a fortune in the portal, and they got to win. And I tell you this, if they have a bad year this year, man, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be awfully interesting because Auburn people, they're known for their patience, right? Absolutely not, right? And so our buddy John Cohen may have an interesting situation. I mean, obviously, 2 years in, you'd think that's not enough time. I agree. But people are not going to sit around and let you wait 3 years to start winning. It's just how it is. People get really, 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 really opinionated about that, as we know. Got Kentucky. 1,371 points. It's so interesting, too, with Kentucky. They almost edged out Auburn, just 11 points between the two of them. But how many years do we always see Kentucky? Kentucky's that team that they're going to win the East this year and then never did. Never did. You can't really hide that this year. Florida, a team that some people expect to have a losing record again. 1,146 points. And then there's South Carolina, who got a SEC championship vote. Again, make that public, Greg Sankey, 923. And then 12th in the league is Arkansas at 749. And then your Bulldogs, 126 points behind Arkansas, next to last. And then Vanderbilt, 293, even with their first place votes. And so here is my objection to this. And it's not, I don't have many, okay? I think expectations for this year have to be tempered. I also factor into, and we'll get to the All-SEC list, Mississippi State with no preseason All-SEC players. Been a while since we could say that. But it kind of stands to reason. I mean, you got a lot of guys coming in here the media doesn't know. But this Arkansas, not just the fact that they're ahead of us, but they're significantly ahead of us. Arkansas has to come to Mississippi State this year, with Sam Pittman being on the hot seat. And let's not forget, and I love Mike Wright to death, but we go up there and play them last year, and the only touchdown they got was a pick six that Mike Wright threw on the very first offensive possession of the game for either team. And then Mississippi State basically won that game playing great defense with a very, 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 very limited offense. And you went into Fayetteville and beat them, and now they have to come here and face the Jeff Lebby offense, especially considering what they lost last year. I mean, people forget that they were ready to riot in the streets in Fayetteville for keeping Sam Pittman. And then some people picked them. Let me just tell you this. I will be absolutely shocked if Arkansas finishes ahead of Mississippi State in the postseason standings. Shocked. Not expecting State to contend for anything, maybe than a Tennessee bowl game. But for that many people to think Arkansas is better than Mississippi State, I think is ridiculous. And for that matter, I think you could make the same case for South Carolina. Florida, you look at and say, you know what, from a talent differential, Steve, Florida has just been a better recruiter. They haven't utilized their recruiting the way they should have. They haven't developed those players perhaps the way they should have. But Florida has talent. And at some point, talent plays, right? So I kind of understand that. And the Kentucky thing, you'll never explain that to me. But again, you start working this thing down. It's like if of course, we didn't have Texas and Oklahoma, but let's just say from the old SEC West, right? We'd be last, but they would have Alabama first, Ole Miss second, LSU third, Texas A&M 4, Auburn 5, and then Arkansas 6 and Mississippi State 7th. So even though it's not technically an East-West, basically in the old format, they got you picked dead last in the West, behind an Arkansas team that you went up there and beat with next to nothing in their own venue in a game they absolutely had to have. I'm just calling it for what it is. So looking at the East, Georgia would be 1, Missouri would be 2, Tennessee 3, Kentucky 4, Florida 5, South Carolina 6, Vanderbilt 7th. So essentially, it's just like last year. Mississippi State got the second fewest votes last year in the media poll, only ahead of Vanderbilt. There are a lot of people that obviously look at us at that same level until we go into their backyard and beat them. But that's how the media poll broke out. Now, where would I expect State to be? I don't know, maybe 12th or 11th, maybe. They got us 13 here. I think I would probably have voted us 11, maybe 10, because I'm a Kentucky hater because I get so sick and tired of that. But State next to bottom here. I think I would probably vote State ahead of Arkansas, South Carolina, and Kentucky. That's so. I think we're right there with Auburn. Hey, Bulldog fans, we love dogs, and not just Bulldogs. We love our own dogs. But why are so many dogs suffering with health issues these days? Actress Katherine Heigl, who's helped save over 16,000 dogs through her own foundation, says she's seeing more issues with joints and odors and health than ever before. And after doing some research, there's one place we can all look to support our dog's health. It's their food. She decided to create something that she could actually feel good about and about feeding her dogs. It's called Superfood Complete. Superfood Complete is made with over 30 of the healthiest ingredients in the world, including several superfoods vital to your dog's health. Badlands Ranch also supports the Jason Debus Heigl Foundation, which has helped rescue thousands of dogs and place them in loving homes. How cool is that? I have fed my dogs this. They absolutely love it. And I kind of use it as a food supplement with their regular food. They prefer this to their regular food. True story. Go to badlandsranch.com/boneyard. And you can order right now and get up to 50% off your regular priced order with a 90-day money-back guarantee. How about that? If you want your dog to experience all these incredible things, go to BADLANDS ranch.com/boneyard. Hey, Bulldog fans, I like saving money. I like a deal. I do. And there's so many restrictions these days. There's always this red tape and all this nonsense and BS. And you need a note from your mom and a pint of blood. And then you got to make some ridiculous agreement just to save a few bucks. Look, for me, it's got to be easy. I don't want any hoops. I don't want any BS or red tape. So when Mint Mobile said, hey, you can get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I said it's too good to be true. Turns out I was wrong. They're right. It really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process, the time spent on hold waiting to cancel the existing service with my old provider. It's just simple. You call Mint Mobile, they get you going. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/boneyard. There you'll see right now the 3-month plans are just $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. How about that? All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number with you, along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/boneyard. That's right, mintmobile.com/boneyard, and cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/boneyard. $45 upfront payment is required. That's equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower, above 40 gigabytes on the unlimited plan. Additional tax, fees, and restrictions may apply. Today's episode brought to you by Zippix Nicotine Toothpicks. Zippix brings you a totally satisfying, convenient, and great tasting way to curb your nicotine cravings. Now you can get your nicotine fix anytime, anywhere without having to rely on smoking or vaping. How cool is that? Zippix toothpicks give you an easier, better, and more discreet way to get your fix. They're available in 6 great, long-lasting flavors and have options in both 2 milligram and 3 milligrams of nicotine. Zippix are perfect for flights, sporting events, restaurants, and literally everywhere else that smoking and vaping are banned. They're also one of the most cost-effective nicotine products on the market. Zippix also offers caffeine and B12 infused toothpicks. If you're not a nicotine user, or if you're trying to get away from the nicotine habit, wouldn't that be a good thing? Zippix have already helped tens of thousands of customers get their nicotine fix without needing to inhale smoke or vape bowls. Make your lungs happy and try Zippix nicotine infused toothpicks. Ditch the cigarettes, ditch the vape. Get some nicotine-infused toothpicks at zippixtoothpicks.com today. Get 10% off your first order by using my code BONEYARD at checkout. Your lungs will be glad you did. You must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix nicotine toothpicks. I think that, and again, that game's here, right? So that's interesting. All right, again, no Bulldogs voted to your all-SEC team, but let's go ahead and take a look here. First-team quarterback Carson Beck of Georgia, running back Trevor Etienne of Georgia, Jarquez Hunter from just down the road at Neshoba Central, your first-team running back from Auburn, Luther Burden III from Mizzou. If you haven't watched him play, you should. Wide receiver Trey Harris from Ole Miss. And I don't know who makes this stuff up here, the thing. Can we just find something to be consistent about? Tight end Caden Priestcorn from Ole Miss. Tyler Booker, offensive lineman from Alabama. Will Campbell from LSU. Kelvin Banks from Texas. Tate Rutledge from Georgia. Cooper Mays from Tennessee. And interesting enough, too, Tennessee, the abbreviation is UT. And then Texas is Tex. Second team, Quinn Ewers. Isn't that interesting that we're talking about those guys from Texas and Oklahoma being all SEC? Nothing against their talent level, but it's just weird that they're now part of our family. Running back Raheem Sanders from South Carolina, who's a dude. C.J. Baxter, running back from Texas. Montrell Johnson from Florida makes the list. Wide receiver Isaiah Bond from Texas. Wide receiver Kyron Lacey from LSU. Tight end Mason Taylor from LSU. Offensive line, Emory Jones, LSU, Caden Proctor from Alabama, Xavier Truss from Georgia, Dylan Fairchild from Georgia, and then Parker Brailsford from Alabama. Third team, first team quarterback, Jalen Milroe, running back, Justice Haynes from Alabama, running back, Ulysses Bentley from Ole Miss. I told a scout 2 years ago I thought that he was a dude, and they looked at me like I was crazy. Wide receiver, Deion Burks from Oklahoma, Dominic Lovett from Georgia. The tight end is Oscar Delp from Georgia. Offensive line, Ernest Green from Georgia. Offensive line, Marquez Cox from Kentucky. And then Trey Zune from A&M is your offensive lineman. Jaden Roberts from Alabama. Jake Majors, Texas. So you see a lot of the offensive linemen are Alabama and Georgia guys. You win in the trenches, kids. First team defense, James Pierce from Tennessee. Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. Of course, transfer from A&M. Deion Walker from Kentucky. Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia. It seems like Georgia always has somebody from Stackhouse, right? The Stackhouse family is synonymous with Georgia football. Harold Perkins from LSU's linebacker. Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma, who's a stud. Deontay Lawson from Alabama. Mikael Williams from Georgia. Malachi Starks from Georgia's DB. Malachi Moore, a lot of Malachis. Malachi Moore from Alabama. Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. That's your secondary. Second team, defensive line, Shamar Turner from A&M, Landon Jackson from Arkansas, really good player. Didn't do much against State last year, but really good player. Nick Scorton, Texas A&M, it's a transfer. Tim Smith from Alabama, Jared Ivey from Ole Miss. Linebackers, Debo Williams, Anthony of South Carolina, Anthony Hill Jr. of Texas, Shmuel Mondon of Georgia. Jedi Barron from Texas is your first DB, Major Burns from LSU, Andrew Macumba from Texas, and then Malik Muhammad from Texas. Third team defense, defensive line, Tim Keenan, the third from Alabama, Princely Umana Mellon from Ole Miss. A lot of Ole Miss guys on this list, too. Defensive line, Trey Moore from Texas. Tonka Hemingway from South Carolina. Your linebackers are Pop Dumas Johnson from Kentucky. Jaheed Campbell from Alabama. Eugene Asante from Auburn. The secondary rounds out with Damani Jackson of Alabama. Dalen Everett from Georgia. Jason Marshall Jr. from Florida. Keon Saab from Alabama. And then Nick Amanawari from South Carolina. The specialist, first team, James Burnett from Alabama. The punter, Bert Auburn from Texas. The place kicker, Nealon Hibbett from Alabama, is your long snapper. Kickoff specialist, Alex McPherson. Return specialist, Barron Brown from Kentucky. Xavier Thomas, that's right, Xavier, all-purpose preseason first team All-SEC for LSU. Second team, Brett Thorson's the punter from Georgia. Graham Nicholson from Alabama is the place kicker. Hunter Rogers from South Carolina. Long snapper, the kickoff specialist, Will Stone from Texas. Return specialist, Xavier Thomas from LSU. All-purpose, Dylan Bell from Georgia. Third team to round it out, the punter, Jeremy Crawshaw from Florida. Place kicker, Alex McPherson from Auburn. Of course, he is the younger brother of former Bulldog commitment Evan McPherson. They went to Florida with Dan Mullen. Long snapper, Slade Roy from LSU. Kickoff specialist, Trey Smack from Florida. What a great name. Return specialist, Keontae Scott from Auburn. All-purpose, Barron Brown from Kentucky. And then all-purpose, the tie, Jaden Blue from Texas. That's a lot of words that don't include anything maroon. And so that's where it sits. So Mississippi State has to prove it. And I think if you're Jeff Lebby, I don't think you walk around publicly talking about a lack of respect, but I do think you talk about it privately. I mean, nobody knows this roster yet. Jeff Lebby and his staff know it better than anybody. And so I think Jeff handled himself exceptionally well at SEC Media Days. And I think what you do behind the scenes is you say, hey, these people don't believe in you. They don't. We're going to show them. It's showtime, right? And you got to go out and make that mean something. So, yeah, we picked a little bit low. Yeah, probably so. But let's be honest about it. Let's be honest with ourselves. If we can't be honest on the Boneyard, we can't be honest anywhere. There are so many question marks about this team. There's not hardly anybody back in a starting position from last year. So knowing that, when you have so few returning starters, other than your own love for Mississippi State sports, could you really say, oh, the Bulldogs are going to be better than expectations? You know, at this point, why would you expect a lot from this team? Well, you wouldn't and you shouldn't. And that's not to be disrespectful. It's just the neighborhood in which we live. It is so difficult to build a roster in one offseason. Now, again, this is where scheme has got to be big. But as mentioned earlier, you can't out-scheme a lack of talent. I think this is a talented roster. I think the bottom line for State is you've got to get some established roles. You got to figure out your rotation at receiver. You got to settle the offensive line, which is basically all new guys plus Albert Reese. You don't know what the defense is going to look like. Now, when I look at our schedule, I say, you know what, there's probably 7 winnable games here, maybe 8 winnable games, but I certainly don't expect us to win all those games. I think we'll win a couple toss-ups. But I also understand this. I understand that this is a very unforgiving league. Very unforgiving. Now, the flip side of it is they really don't know what Jeff Lebby's going to do. Our opponents don't. They may know some of the concepts that he runs. They can go back and look at what he did at Oklahoma and in some respects at Ole Miss and Central Florida and say, you know what, hey, here's kind of the bread and butter of what he is and what he's about. But this is a guy that kind of predicates the whole offense on matchups, you know, and leverage, you know, applying pressure, you know, and we're kind of banking that our 4th and 5th receivers out in the pass pattern are better than your 4th and 5th defensive backs. And the difference is we know where we're going and you don't. And so we have to make sure that, number one, you keep Blake Shapen upright. There is some athleticism there that hadn't really existed at the position in a few years. To be honest with you, I harbor maybe the ability to go back and say, maybe since Dak Prescott. You say, but Steve, Nick Fitzgerald set the SEC record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback, and he did. Set all kind of records. But Nick was not a prolific passer. He had a big arm, but he wasn't always on target. Keaton Thompson, kind of a similar situation. Great athlete, wasn't a great passer. And people thought we were holding him back here, and he goes to Virginia. And what do you know? He's not a great passer there either, but they found a way to utilize his athleticism to win some ball games. And then, you look at what we've had the last few years. I mean, even Garrett Schrader. Garrett Schrader was a really good runner, but of course he was a freshman with us too, let's be fair. But even at Syracuse, he hasn't been a prolific passer. And so you work through all this. Will Rogers obviously was a prolific passer, didn't have the strongest arm, was accurate, could read defenses, wasn't the best of athletes, gave us everything he had. But I think Blake Shapen's a guy you look at now and say, okay, this is not just an athlete playing quarterback, and we've had a ton of that. And this is not just a quarterback that doesn't have dual threat ability. So you got to keep Blake Shapen healthy, got to keep him upright, got to have him run to keep people honest, but probably not a ton of design quarterback runs. And he's a competitor. He's going to want to go, but we got to be smart about all that. You say, yeah, but Steve, we got Chris Parson, we got, Michael Van Buren, and yes, we do. But we don't need to be in a situation where we're forcing somebody out there just a year or 2 years removed from high school that's learning a new offense. And so I think it's important to kind of understand everything with this team offensively is going to go as far as Blake Shapen can take us. Now, some very accomplished wide receivers and very talented wide receivers have joined the program. Those guys understand, too, there's a sense of urgency with them. Kelly Akari, if he proves that he can do what he did at UTEP in the SEC, the guy's going to make some money. Kevin Coleman, highly recruited guy. He shows up, realizes his full potential, and this offense is going to make some money. And so when you begin to kind of break those things down, yes, there is some mystery with this team, but there's also some intrigue. What's Mississippi State going to look like? And when you look historically, teams that rebuild rosters are not teams that really go play in Florida bowl games. They don't contend for New Year's Day games. And certainly now they won't contend for the playoff. And I think this year, understanding that is probably good for everybody's mental health. And there's going to be some games that we feel like we let get away. And there's going to be some games that we're going to make some struggles on defense and probably at times on offense. But I know that Jeff Lebby is a guy that understands offensive philosophy. He has a proven offense, and now he gets to run his own show. 100% of the show. So there's probably going to be some things that maybe he hadn't always shown at other places that he may do here because of the fact he's accountable to himself. But no, I'm not going to sit here and lob shots at the media. My peers, even though this poll is really not to be taken seriously, as I say all the time, anybody can make a list. You can go make a list too. I mean, a lot of people do. A lot of people that have built a Twitter following, of a couple hundred people, just putting out their list. There's some other people that have these huge followings that know nothing. They just put out a list. It's like, here are the top 50 football venues and concession stands in the country, knowing they've never been to those 50 venues, much less bought a hot dog at the concession stand. So all that stuff's just got to be taken with a grain of salt. The bottom line is this, is the preseason poll means nothing. Nothing. It's like preseason polls don't mean anything, and they don't. What's going to happen on that field is going to determine the quality of this season and kind of the stepping stone, in many respects, for Jeff Lebby and Mississippi State for the future. So again, tempered expectations. I think we'll be better than advertised, but again, there's a lot of reason to have questions about this team. And that's not being negative. That's just kind of being honest. You have to understand that. And there are some people out there that I've had some people tell me, Steve, I think we can win 8 or 9. I just don't see it. Now, I may feel differently 2 to 3 weeks into this deal. Hey, you win the first 4, including that home game against Florida, I might could jump on board with that. But there's just so many things that we need to see. And again, we'll have an opportunity to see them some in the fall, and we'll share some things with you. And listen, there'll be guys, there'll be glowing reviews, and there'll be other reviews that'll be disappointing. But It doesn't matter what we in the media think. All that matters is what the scoreboard shows at the end of a ball game. And I think this is going to be a very fun team to watch. Not expecting a great year. I'm expecting a fun year, though, and I hope you are too. All right, time for today's Top 10 list. As always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR.com. Blair Chandler is my friend, your friend, our collective friend in the mortgage industry. It can be a complicated process. Simplify it by lending on a professional. Blair Chandler. Phone number 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. That goes directly to him. Not to a call center, to a receptionist, a personal assistant, none of that stuff. It goes directly to Blair. You're communicating directly with the man himself that can get you from a dream to the closing table. Right? 23 years of experience in the industry. He will be your advocate with underwriting, knows how to structure your loan to put you in a position to be approved, right? So if you're looking for a game day condo, you're looking for your first home, your second home, maybe life has dealt you a curveball and you got to do a reset. Simplify things by letting Blair take something important off of your plate and putting it on his. And if you're looking, get pre-qualified. It's a very easy process. It'll save you a lot of time and effort as you search for a new home or your first home. It also will get that real estate agent awfully motivated to get you taken care of because they understand kind of what we're dealing with. What's the price range that fits you and your budget? Blair Chandler can assist you with that. Again, 601-500-2344. All right, had a request. I think we've actually done this before. I think. But I like the request so much for a couple reasons why. The person wanted to remain anonymous, and he said, once you begin talking about this, my friends will know that it's me because we've had this discussion before. A young man that played, he may not be a young man anymore, but when he was a young man, he was a saxophone player in the famous Maroon Band. And that he and some of his musician friends have had the discussion, what's the best sax solo in modern music? And so here we go. Have a little sax and get you guys all fired up a little bit for the weekend. It reminds me, too, when I was at Jones. And there was a guy that was in the band at Jones. I don't remember his name. I want to say he was from Jones County, maybe from Laurel High School. And he said one of these days he was going to get a personalized license plate that had NE1 for sax. NE1 for sax. I dig it. All right, number 10, a band that I don't think we've ever talked about on the top 10 list. It's the Motels. It's a great track from early to mid 80s called Only the Lonely. Great saxophone part on this. And as I rank these two, I'm not ranking them on technical proficiency, as I am not a master of the woodwinds. Maybe you are. So don't think, hey, well, this is so much better. I'm just picking what passes the ear test for me. And you may feel differently. That's completely okay. Number 9, the Rolling Stones. Saxophone's been a big part of some of the songs in their catalog, but I think this is one that really kind of stands out to me. It's Waiting on a Friend. And many of you are waiting on a friend. Perhaps I could be that friend, because I am your good friend and host. Number 8, I could have put this one a little bit higher, and I'll tell you why I didn't. It's because I think really the key element in the musical composition of this American classic is the bass line itself. It is a funk line that is absolutely memorable. As soon as you hear the opening bars, you know exactly what song is coming. It's the Commodore's Brick House. Of course, that predates Lionel Richie. The better years of the Commodore years were Lionel Richie years, even though I do like Night Shift. But Brick House, everybody knows it. It is a timeless classic. Number 7, a song that many of you have heard, and it was a bit of a one-hit wonder. I remember when this song first came out, they had a female lead singer, and it went everywhere. It seemed like everybody had them on their show. They were on American Bandstand. They had them do some other things, with morning TV. It's a band called Quarter Flash, and a great track called Harden My Heart. And I think really the vocal is good, but I think the delivery of the saxophone, that was also played by the lead singer, was really the shining moment in this song. So saxophone players out there, stand up. Number 6, probably the most memorable saxophone solo in American cinema history. You already know the song if you know 80s pop culture. It's Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll. Tom Cruise made that famous. That was a song that everybody loved, but it kind of faded a little bit. And then all of a sudden, Risky Business comes out. We get a chance to see Rebecca De Mornay. It's true. But that's the moment that everybody kind of, like, you see it sometimes. It'll make the rounds on social media, and people try to replicate that. It's like the Risky Business Challenge or something, and if it's not a thing, maybe we should make it one. But there's Tom Cruise sliding around in his socks, mimicking the saxophone solo as part of his performance of Bob Seger's Old Time Rock and Roll, which, I mean, that's a timeless classic in of itself. Number 5, I had this album, the LP, and for those of you from a different generation, the LP was long play, which meant the full album. We used to go out and buy 45s as well. You know, you could get a 45 and then have like an A-side and a B-side. Thus the term B-side, right? You went out and bought the single and they put something else, maybe a deeper cut on the B-side to get you to go buy the album, because you start thinking, you know, hey, this is a song I'm not quite as familiar with. Maybe I should go buy the full album. So a lot of people sampled an album by buying a 45 first. But I bought this. I don't recall if I bought it with my own money or if it was a birthday gift. But it's Hall & Oates' H2O album. And the great song on there is Man-Eater. A couple other good ones on there too. Possession, Obsession was really good. That's a song that's sung by John Oates. But the saxophone, really the highlight of the track, Man-Eater. Of course, the oh, here she comes. Watch out, boys. She'll chew you up. It's true. You got to be careful with it. I'm just laying it out there. It's a cautionary tale. You young bucks, keep those heads on a swivel. Number 4, a song that has been, I won't say that it's timeless. I guess for people from my generation, maybe it is. But this is a song that has had a lot of life to it. And it was a huge hit way back when. And the composition on this song is really, really good. It's Spandau Ballet's True. I know this much is true. There have been some people that have written some books using that title, and a lot of us just kind of paying homage to that. It's just things, too, you begin to realize, too. It's a love song at its core. But the saxophone, kind of in a jazz tone, really, really good. Number 3, I have shared with you guys before on this show that I'm not really a closet NXS fan, but it might surprise you as a rocker that I am an NXS fan. I think Michael Hutchence was an absolutely incredible singer, an incredible performer, very handsome man, very talented guy. Had his struggles, he did. It's really a shame that we lost Michael Hutchence at such a young age. But I believe that Michael Hutchence and NXS wrote and recorded the greatest love song of my generation. And of course, there's a big saxophone solo on that one as well. And it's Never Tear Us Apart by NXS. I think it is absolutely a beautiful song. And there's sometimes I'm riding around full of melancholy, I'll put it on. You know, it's one of those songs that really speaks to the heart of me. Maybe it does to you. And Michael Hutchence, of course, that amazing hair in that video. But it's one of those songs that I think that when you look back at the 80s, there are some songs that never escaped the decade. But this is one that I believe, not only did it escape, I think it continues to thrive. There are a lot of people that still use this song in movies and things of that nature. And I think it's one that's important that we don't let die. Number 2, I don't know if you watched the Wham documentary, but you should. If you like music, you like 80s pop culture, you like to be not just entertained, but educated, I think that Wham documentary is worth your time and effort. To see them just kind of, two high school chums say, hey, we're going to put a band together and we're going to be big. And then they did. And of course, the major debut album was Make It Big in America. And they did. And this is a song that George Michael wrote when he was like 18 years old. He didn't even know what life was about. And he wrote the timeless classic, Careless Whisper. And as soon as I saw that, I texted Ian, my youngest, and I said, I think you've kind of been skating by. When a guy that of your age can write a song like this, we got to do better, kid. We got to get it going. It's incredible to think about that in hindsight, that a guy, that young man, that young a person with such limited life experience could write a song that was so incredibly relatable to people. And of course, it's been re-recorded by many people. Seether did a great job with it. Everybody knows Careless Whisper. But number one, and this was an easy decision for me. Again, I'm not a saxophone player, so I don't know how technically proficient this musician was on the instrument. But when I think about rock and roll sometimes, I don't know that horns match. Just kind of saying it for what it is. I think in pop music it does. I don't know that it always fits with rock and roll. And some people try to force it. Aerosmith has had some success using horns in their catalog. Take Me to the Other Side from Aerosmith's one of them. Really good use of horns. There's a lot of good things out there. Black Crowes did some horns and it kind of worked. Doesn't always work though. In this one, it was an absolute perfect fit. And it's Foreigner's Urgent. And there's so many times I listen to that song, I can't wait for it to get to the sax solo. I can't wait for it. And how many times in my life have I been like, hey, the Steve Vai guitar solo is coming up here on Fulfill Your Lovin' from Whitesnake. Eddie Van Halen's fixing to crank it down right here, right? And you get excited about that. You begin to look forward to that. Vito Bratta from White Lion on Wait. Andy Timmons from Danger Danger on Beat the Bullet. There's always something cool coming. You think, hey, I'm looking forward to that, right? Mick Mars' guitar solo on Dr. Feelgood. It's like you think about that. But this blend of an instrument that doesn't always work well with real rock and roll. And it sounds almost sacrilegious, because rock and roll came from the blues. A lot of horns in the blues. But I think in many respects the genre kind of graduated from that. But this is one of those things that to me is just an absolute masterpiece. Not just the lyrical content, which isn't exactly PG. It's not. It's basically a cheating song in many respects. Because I'm not looking for a love that lasts, right? That's what it's about, urgent, right? But the saxophone solo in that is just absolutely, in my mind, flawless. So that's your top 10 songs with sax solos I wanted to share today. I've got something else planned for Monday that features an instrument that... and we may have done this one before too, but I have got some other things that I want to kind of work into that. So we don't mind having a 2.0 list. But if you have an idea for the top 10 list, reach out and let us know. We may just use it on the show. We're happy to give you credit if you want it. You can find me on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. It's always good to hit up Roy, and you don't have to message him. Just tweet him, right? You can find Roy, my friend, on Twitter at Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC 67, and our great list also on Spotify under that same handle. And I would encourage you to just subscribe. Many people travel a lot or you're working through the day, and sometimes your own playlist gets old. You pick those songs and you wear them out, and you're like, I got to change it up a little bit. And so, let us help you with that. I also want to point out, too, that there's a band that we talked about a lot when they first came out of Memphis, Tennessee, a band called Sleep Theory. They debuted a brand new single yesterday called Stuck in Your Head. Really, really good. If you like the earlier Sleep Theory stuff, of course, Sleep Theory, yeah. If you like the earlier Sleep Theory stuff, they've got an EP out on Epitaph Records that has been wildly successful. They're just kind of continuing to add and build their catalog. You can find a video on YouTube. I watched it live as they debuted it. Super cool track. And so like being able to share that with you guys. Your bands that when we first began talking about them, I had some of you reach out and say, these guys are really from Memphis. They absolutely are. And a matter of fact, a couple of them were gifted through a Bulldog friend of the family a couple copies of When the Bottom Falls, my book, because that title was inspired by a Sleep Theory song. So there you go. I don't know how you feel about those guys, but I love them. I like Sleep Token too. Maybe we need to do, I don't know if we've done a Sleep Token. Maybe we have done Sleep Token. But anyway, there's a lot of sleep out there these days in rock and roll. And be sure and check them out. If you've not checked out Sleep Token, if you like real rock and roll, I had somebody hit me up a while back and said, hey, Steve, have you heard Architects? I absolutely have and absolutely love everything they've done. Sleep Token is a lot like Architects. I kind of like that overprocessed, overproduced sound. I like good, true rock and roll too, but I like to kind of shake it up a little bit. So I like to share those things with you because I know some of you guys really love music and some of you don't. But I like it when people reach out and say, hey, Steve, I've never heard this band before. Thanks for sharing. It's become a regular part of my playlist. And I remember when we did the Ra list. Remember Ra? I would say within 24 hours of that Boneyard episode hitting, I had a dozen people that basically all had the same sentiment. Where in the world, how did I miss this band? Where were they? Where was I when these guys were rolling? I don't know. I can't answer that. But I love turning you guys on to new music. Maybe it's some music you've forgotten or music you never knew. But we like to be a service to you here at the Boneyard. So hit us up. Let us know your ideas. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. I love Campus Bookmart. You do too. And if you don't, it's because you haven't interacted with them yet. You should. Don't go to Amazon, and for goodness sake, don't go to eBay to look for your Mississippi State merchandise. You want something new, you want something official, you want something that supports a Starkville business, you go to Campus Bookmart. If you can't make it to town to see their beautiful and smiling faces, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. It's BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders above $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. Campus Bookmart, an institution in this town, and you know where to go when you need Mississippi State merch. And it doesn't matter if it's a graduation gift, a wedding gift, a housewarming gift. They've got something to accommodate you. It's not just T-shirt and caps, even though you can get those there too. It's a one-stop shop for the Mississippi State Bulldog fan. Be sure and check them out. Okay, had some conversations with some people, in my industry. And I believe, and I think most of us probably maybe feel this way, I think that SEC Football Media Days has lost its luster. I really do. Now, of course, we've had some big moments over the years. You had the year that Phil Fulmer didn't show up because he was attempting to evade a subpoena in the old Ronnie Cottrell lawsuit. So he phoned it in, right? Answered the questions over the phone. We had the whole Hugh Freeze thing, went to media days, and next thing you know, he's gone. Of course, a very contentious back and forth between Hugh Freeze and the SEC Network's Paul Feinbaum. I know many of you are fans of Paul Feinbaum. I've been on his show before. But I just think it's one of those things that you have to kind of understand how life works. Feinbaum is kind of an agent provocateur, right? And probably the only really somewhat contentious type deal is, Lane Kiffin telling him, I don't know what you're good at. Those guys are friends. And so it's a little tongue-in-cheek. A lot of people kind of took that a little more seriously than I think it was intended. But there's some discussion about kind of continuing to move media days around rather than just have it in Hoover. And next year, of course, it goes to Atlanta. But I think it's good for the media. Like for the teams, they just fly in the morning of, handle their media responsibilities. They go to dinner and fly out. So it's not like they get a chance to go enjoy the town. So I think for the SEC media, it's kind of cool that it moves around. You get to go somewhere different. It's interesting, too. We had some TV people from around our state that never really come to anything up here, and they went out to SEC Media Days and provided some coverage, which is interesting because most of that stuff you can get on the feed. You could use it. But, yeah, hey, to each their own. Glad they were able to go. But I began to kind of ask myself, and I had many of you, I've observed your conversations. I mean, not in a CIA way, right? I don't have those capabilities as far as you know. But it's so interesting to me, like there's just not been any buzz. And I think part of it, we moved it out to Dallas this year. Had to welcome Texas and Oklahoma. And everybody puts on the cowboy hats and that kind of stuff. And it looks kind of contrived to me. I think we're asking people to do a little bit too much. But it has really basically become basically a content opportunity for the SEC network, pretty much of its own, right? There's just not a lot of opportunity out there outside of what the network does. And of course, Radio Row is big. And I understand that Jeff Lebby was able to accommodate everybody that made a request, which is super cool. I think it says a lot about Mississippi State, about Jeff Lebby, about our media relations people. There are a lot of people out there that'll tell you, hey, Mississippi State was really cooperative this year. And we need to be, right? We've got a first-year coach. We've got to get our message out there, got to get our brand out there, And there's some other people who are like, hey, we just don't have time to do it. And that's kind of what happens sometimes when you get more established as a coach, that, you can kind of pick and choose what you do. But they told me Jeff Lebby and his reps didn't really turn down anything. Kind of had some people reach out ahead of media days, and they put a schedule together, and they got it all done. And that makes me really proud, and I think says a lot about Jeff Lebby too. You get out there, get your face in front of people, right? Of course, it's not a beauty contest. We got to go win games. But I like the fact that Lebby's out there, and people, of course, can't resist but to bring up the Lane Kiffin stuff and the social media stuff. And he goes, hey, I'm leaving all that to him. We want to win the ball game, and the game's not going to be won on Twitter, right? We all see it that way. But, what are your memorable moments from media days? I remember years ago, it's like we couldn't wait to go cover this stuff. And this is one of the reasons that I don't go. I don't go to that dog and pony show anymore. David and Justin can go. And there's some other people within our industry that don't go either, because it's just so much easier to get work done from home on the network. Of course, you don't get the small grouping thing. Lebby was very accommodating of our local media and kind of gave us a small group meeting before he went to the big room. And so you get some things that are kind of germane to the beat, and that's always great. We hadn't talked to him, since in the spring, and so that's always nice. But there's just not a lot of stories. And one of the things that I wonder sometimes is this thing not run its course. Now, I know they're going to continue to do it, but has it jumped the shark? Because usually, there's social media traffic, and there'll be all these videos, and there's even memes and jokes and things like that. This year, there just hadn't been any of that. Or not that I've seen, at least not much. There's not a lot of these hot takes or hot topics or even hot quotes. John Lewis, of course, kind of turned some heads when he talked about, the whole welcome to the SIP or we run the SIP thing. He answered right back, and he's a Mississippi guy. Of course, that kind of raised some eyebrows over there across the way. But listen, and some of our people have said, oh, he shouldn't have said that. I am perfectly fine with him saying that. Listen, you got to go back it up on the football field. And you better believe that, the week of the Egg Bowl, that's going to be plastered all over the Ole Miss football complex, bulletin board material. But I don't like people that aren't confident in their abilities, And there's a fine line between confident and being cocky. But if you write the check, you got to make sure it cashes. That's how life works. But, just kind of looking at some things, kind of preparing for the show here. And even the people that compile these lists about, big memorable moments, I think they really struggle to do it. I mean, it's like, is the headline that Texas and Oklahoma are part of the league? And again, I don't think that has moved the needle the way that some people suggested it has. I think when it first popped up, and then oh, that's not going to happen. Oh, it happened. Okay, it's done, right? Oh, they're going to join early. Okay, cool. And we're going to go out to Austin, Texas this year, which will be neat. But I don't think it's been this thing you look at, you're like, oh, holy smokes, Texas and Oklahoma are part of the SEC now. I'm just basing that on the barometer that I see with you guys. And maybe as we get into the season and we're hyping it up before we go play Texas, you're like, hey, this will be super cool. And so I think then you'll see it. But I think this whole preparing the whole media days around the Texas experience and the Cowboy experience, I don't think it moved the needle. I just don't. And maybe you see it differently, but your social media traffic would suggest that it's not. And I actually got John Lewis's quote right here. Talked about the come to the SIP thing. It's overrated. This is our state. Everybody knows that. We run the SIP because we run Mississippi. We've been saying it. They're just following us, so it's okay. They literally want to be us. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm perfectly fine with it. And I will tell you, too, I'm still disappointed that we took down the Welcome to Our State boards around the state. It was great marketing. It's great marketing. And there was people in Mississippi that cheer for the Bulldogs. They were awfully proud of that. All of a sudden, you go on a long trip, you come back home, and there's Dan Mullen waving to you. We got to bring it back. And, of course, right after that, Greg Byrne left and went to University of Arizona. I'm driving back from California, and then there's a welcome to Wildcat country when you cross over the state line. So they took that idea and ran with it. I don't think it's a situation where we have to go back and say, I don't know if we should revisit that. I thought it was great. And the fact that it irritated Ole Miss people, that made it even better. Of course, we need to win the Egg Bowl before we go start doing that, though. You don't go out there and start claiming false valor. You got to go win the Egg. Then you go put up the billboards. And the fact that Ross Bjork was so disturbed by the whole thing that he went and spoke to Mississippi State administrators like, hey, I'm trying to keep my people at bay here, but can you take those signs down? That's all the reason to put them back up. Show some pride. That's the thing that I think about when I begin to look at sports, business, everything. It's easier not to be great. It's much easier. Many people know this. Because the great people are willing to do the things the good people want. And really, good is the enemy of great. Because once people reach a certain level of success, you're like, hey, I've reached enough. And they stop pushing, stop climbing. They forget the things, what it was like to live on North 34th Street in Hattiesburg, and you have to go look in your couch cushions to get gas money. They forget what it felt like to do that. You're just living day to day. It's like, what can I do today? Knowing that a better day was coming. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, hey, debit card always works. My debit card didn't get declined. Life is good. You can't live that way. You'll never have anything substantial in life if you just get satisfied with that station. And I think that's the thing with Mississippi State that I think about. And I don't even think it's about spending money, even though that's part of it. It's a mentality. And one of the things that I admired about the Dan Mullen era and the Jackie Sherrill era is we had head coaches that simply didn't care what other people thought. We've had some that have been a little bit too aware of the noise. Mike Leach really didn't care, And Mike Leach, of course, at the tail end of his career, God rest his soul. But I think you have to have this whole thing. You got to win in Mississippi first. And listen, Ole Miss is going to have a great team this year. They should. If those guys stay healthy, they could play for some really big things. And I love the fact that, Dan Mullen years ago on Twitter, our men's basketball team won a game, and he goes, hey, congratulations to our men's basketball team contributing to our dominance of the school up north up there. He galvanized the fan base with that language. He did. I go back to the years of Jackie Sherrill. Jackie Sherrill said, I want Mississippi State fans to be able to have that Mississippi State coffee cup at work and walk around with pride, identifying with the Bulldogs. But it's not enough. We go back to the beginning of the show. It's not enough just to talk trash or to talk, you know what? You got to do, you know what? You got to go back it up. That's an important aspect of this. But it is a mentality. And I one of the things, and I joke about this, but it's not really a joke. When I go speak sometimes, I'll tell people, please encourage your daughters and granddaughters to marry positive Mississippi State people because we're trying to breed negativity out of the fan base. I want to breed this poor old Mississippi State thing out of the fan base. Either we breed it out or we run it out or we re-educate it out. I think it's okay to expect big things. I think it's okay for us to say, you know what? This isn't the Mississippi State of our grandfathers. I think it's also important that we respect all those people that laid the foundation for what we enjoy today. But we have to have a winning mentality. And everything that we are a part of, anything that has Mississippi State's fingerprints on it, we have to make sure that it's excellent. And now, listen, there are a lot of people out there that major in minor things. Don't get me wrong. And there are some people that think, well, these things matter. They do, but where are they really on the ladder of awareness? We talk about, hey, recruiting and things of that nature. We want to be the cool school and the edgy school and the fun school and things of that nature. Yeah, I get it. Let's not forget we're also an Aggie school, okay? And nothing helps student enrollment more than winning in football. Nothing. But the next part of that is that anything that we put our name on, we need to be proud of. I'm a firm believer in the old adage, if we just settle for good enough, will anything ever truly be good enough? And I think that's where we have to do things differently. And I think Zach Selman has that vision, And sometimes, listen, we got to be careful too. We can't really run before we walk. We'll go out there and, spend up all the money and say, well, here we are, We got to make sure that we understand how this thing kind of fits together. But I think it all starts really with me and you. Now, one of the things that I share all the time, even though we have a message board at genespage.com, you should certainly come be a part of that, is what you and I say on a message board matters. Doesn't matter maybe as much as you think it does, but it may matter more than you think it does too. A lot of people out there that say, hey, that's kind of the pulse of the fan base. And that's not to say that we're all going to agree, and that's perfectly okay, as long as it comes from a good place. But I get so tired of, and all due respect, I get so tired of the Tennessee Bowl mentality. Like, we're just happy to make a bowl game. I think that's the bare minimum. That should be the minimum standard. And listen, I've written a handful of historical books about Mississippi State athletics. And there are so many times that I'll find a quote, from an alum or a coach or somebody like that from years gone by, and they'll talk about, well, we got to beat Ole Miss. We got to beat Ole Miss. As long as we beat Ole Miss, I'm okay. That's not good. That's not healthy. It's not. We should want more than that. And yeah, we always want the egg, but I want the egg and the bowl trophy. And I know some years, the bowl locale may not be very exotic. I'm a realist. I don't expect us to be playing in the Orange Bowl or the Sugar Bowl every year. And I think a down year for us should be a Tennessee Bowl. This should never be the goal. That should be the foundational standard. And you say, but Steve, I've tweeted a lot about this. Well, have you given the Bulldog Initiative? Do you buy season tickets? Those are the things that I begin to think about. And listen, not everybody's capable of doing that. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and just financially shame some people that love Mississippi State that maybe can't afford to be a part of that. Okay, don't misunderstand me. But everything that we do and everything that we put our name on needs to be of excellence from start to finish. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is the recruiting experience. I liken it back to the days when I was in the retail furniture business. And I worked for Holligmeyer's Furniture. We used to have this big recliner contest every year. We work it through Lane, and then, of course, if you sold a Lazy Boy, you get like 1.5 or whatever. But one of the things that I used to explain to my salespeople is like, hey, here's what I want you to do. Here's some product knowledge. Lazy Boy, their mechanism is a little bit different, but it's real quiet, and then you can lay the bag down with your weight. You don't have to use the handle over there, and then you've got, S continuous springs here in the seat. There's a little product knowledge. You have to make people understand that you know your product. But more importantly, with presentation, I would tell people, hey, I want you to turn that recliner over. You show them how it's made, and you show them the feature and the benefit of why that thing works. Because when they go to the next furniture store, that salesman's not going to do that. And so more times than not, purchasing, especially a purchase like that, something you're going to use every day, it's going to be a better relationship. I'm going to buy the product that I like the best from the most knowledgeable salesperson. That's typically how that works. And so when I liken that to recruiting, because when recruits come to Mississippi State, I think Jeff Levy's done a good job with this. I know July hadn't been a great recruiting month for us, and we're going to talk some recruiting stuff here in the final segment. But there's always going to be an ebb and flow with recruiting. But the thing that I gather from talking to recruits who have visited Mississippi State is the experience here has been markedly different than it's been in other places. And a lot of people out there are saying, hey, you know what, Steve, it's all about NIL. And NIL is always a factor, but it's not always just about NIL. We can't just bring kids on campus and say, hey, here you go, here's your room key. How much money is it going to take to sign you? No, you got to be able to put up a developmental plan. Here's an educational plan. But I can tell you that recruits are responding to Jeff Lebby. They're like, Jeff Lebby is so cool. And the thing that I have learned about Jeff, he's one of those people, it's easy to get him to smile. He's one of those kind of people, which is kind of a natural positive vibe around him. And I think, if he came in here and tried to do things the way Mike Leach did him, he'd probably fail because he's not Mike Leach. He has to be Jeff Lebby. And so what do? They bring guys to Jeff Lebby's house. They have the big barbecue. People go swimming. They get out there and just have fun. Because in many respects, even though Jeff is he's not older like me and you, but Lebby is a guy that he's still a big kid. Now, of course, he's a coach, but he's a guy that understands how to have fun. And so he's out there laughing, joking, slapping backs, and it's a genuine thing. It's not just something we put together and say, hey, Jeff, you got to go do this, and let's have a good attitude. It's not required. And so when I began to think about the recruiting aspect of it, about excellence, it's not just the guided tour. It's not just everybody get on the golf cart, let's go around and see the facilities. All that stuff is going to happen everywhere else. The thing that people tell you all the time, the reason that I picked Mississippi State is the people. It's the people. And I think Jeff Lebby's one of our people, not just because he draws a check. I think, but when you guys begin to interact with him and they go out and do the Road Dogs tour and things like that, and I don't mean when he's up on stage, but when you get a chance to shake his hand, say hello to him, maybe get a picture, I think you're going to be impressed because this guy is the genuine article when it comes to that. We've had some people in the past that have been a little bit socially awkward, and you can tell it's kind of forced. Like, I got to get out here and slap backs and kiss babies and that kind of stuff and wink at babies' mamas and things of that nature. And you can tell it's not natural. And I think there are some people that get thrust into a leadership position that don't really have leadership qualities. It's like the old Peter principle, right? Everybody rises to their own level of incompetence. It's true. And that's business 101. I think when you look at this aspect of it, I think you're going to find out that Jeff Lebby is a winner. And Jeff Lebby is a guy, listen, Zach Arnett was a winner too, but it didn't work out. I think all the little homiletics things, all the things off the field are things that Zach kind of struggled with, even though he's a very intelligent guy. I think a lot of those things come a lot more natural for Jeff. Jeff's a first-time head coach too, but when you're around him, it doesn't feel that way. This is a guy you can tell that has been around a lot of social gatherings. This is a guy that understands the importance that you guys have. And I'm not trying to sit here and talk critically of Zach Arnett. I never would. Not about anything personal, obviously. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to see some different branding when it comes to Mississippi State under Jeff Lebby. And we all talk about the Showtime and things like that, and people run with that. But let Jeff Lebby get a couple of wins under his belt, and I think you're going to see something here that maybe has been missing for a little while. Final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Just Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, and you can see what all the buzz is about. When you do, their Facebook page will come up, and you can look through the pictures and see all the amenities that are available to you when you book a stay at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. So you absolutely should. Whether it's a ball game weekend or just a weekend retreat, maybe you're bringing a work group to town, and it's better to have everybody under one roof. You all have your own private sleeping quarters, but some common areas where you can sit and dine and plan the rest of your stay. Yeah, maybe you want to get out and go enjoy some of our fine restaurants here in the greater Starkville area. Or maybe you want to go out and buy some groceries and use that full-service kitchen. Also, the wet bar there, that great back porch area, the fire pit. There's so many things to like about the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, just 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. You can kind of do all your tailgating there. Save yourself some trouble later, right? Yeah, it's true. Be sure and check them out. Now, when you Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, you're going to have some booking options that come up for you, too. You can book through Airbnb. You can book through VRBO. Maybe you've got a credit. Maybe you just prefer to use that. That's completely your decision. But if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website. Use promo code BSR10. That's BSR, the number 10, BSR10. Get 10% off your stay. Just by listening to this show, you're saving a few bucks. Really a lot of bucks, right? It's a great thing. I love the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Some friends of mine have utilized it, had a great experience. I suspect you will too. Again, Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay when you're visiting the Golden Triangle. All right, a lot of people wonder, hey, when's our next commitment coming, Steve? I suspect it'll be Tyler Lockhart, and I'm not the least bit worried about Tyler Lockhart. Whether it be this week, next month, 2 months, I'm not in any way worried about this. And I really wasn't worried about it when he was committed to Auburn. I know some of you were. It's like all of a sudden something doesn't go to script and we freak out, right? That's recruiting, especially in this day and age. And I think Tyler Lockhart is a fabulous player and probably the best player that I saw in person last year at the handful of high school games that I went and covered. But I think this is a guy that understands the pure nature of defensive football. You have to go get the football. You have to go get the football. And there's just a natural ability there. And so I think he'll make a great linebacker at Mississippi State. I think he'll be a young man that you'll want your kids to get pictures with. I think he is that talented and he's really down to earth. Of course, it helps that his brother, TJ Lockhart, is here. One of his best friends, Fat Clark, is here. And so that's probably the next one. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I believe it is going to happen. I think it's really a matter of when rather than if. And then we're kind of waiting out Kevin Otis. A lot of discussion about him doing it this summer before the season begins. Tony Vance is his coach down there, one of the best coaches that I know in any sport in the state of Mississippi, and a guy that really loves his kids. There's a lot of guys out there, and if you've never been a high school coach, you can't fully appreciate that aspect of it. How important it is to have a coach that cares about the well-being of these young men, not just for the purposes of winning a ball game on Friday night, but to see that they get their education and become men and solid contributors in their communities. And that's what Tony Vance has kind of done throughout his career. I'm a huge Tony Vance fan, followed his career for many years. He's been a great friend to me. And one of the things I love about Tony, too, is like if I call him and ask him about other players, he's not one of those guys that's just going to always praise his own kids. I'll say, hey, Tony, who in your district or who in your area has kind of impressed you? You'd be amazed at the information that he gives. You know, he's like, hey, we played this team, and this guy was outstanding, and you know, this is a junior to watch, and those kinds of resources are invaluable to us. And so anytime that Tony Vance has coached a kid, I always feel like, hey, this is probably a safe bet, right? Because this is a young man that's probably been brought up in a program that teaches accountability, responsibility, and I know what to expect from those young men, right? You're not going to get them up here and all of a sudden have cancer in your locker room because they have been part of a culture that has really been instilled in them by a man of character. That's how I always see it. And I think it's so incredibly important when you think about it's not just the potential a young man possesses, but what's he bringing with him? You know, how's he going to impact your locker room? What's he going to do? You know, when maybe we're getting our tails whipped and he's one of those guys. What's he going to be like on the sidelines? Is he going to be over there with his helmet on, ready to go, trying to find a way? I think guys that come from Tony Vance's program, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody that's bought in to what we got going on. Outside of that, I really believe what we're going to do is kind of wait till we get into the fall visits. Now, Caleb Cunningham is set to visit Mississippi State and Ole Miss in September. I also expect him to be on our campus and their campus, as well as Auburn. Now, he tweeted out today when it was released that he was visiting Auburn. He goes, hey, no, there's not going to be any flipping. The thing that I would say about that is the recruiting process is long. He just recently made his commitment, so obviously he's very committed to that decision. But it's easy to be committed in July to the out-of-state program. Not that I don't think Alabama can hang on to him. I think they can. I think they're going to have to work to do so. I know State and Ole Miss both not going to give up on Caleb Cunningham. And I think the main thing that State needs to do is to put a quality offense on the field this year. You go out there, you can throw the football around. it has been forever and a day since we have had a wide receiver drafted. And everybody that recruits wide receivers that competes against Mississippi State mentions that. Now, I think it's just a matter of time before Chad Bumpus puts some guys in the league. The truth of the matter is Chad Bumpus should have been in the league too. He led the Miami Dolphins in most receiving categories when he was a preseason guy, and they elected not to keep him. So he understands that aspect of it too. And I think there's some of these transfer guys that have come in this year that will have an opportunity, because I think this offense is really going to highlight wide receivers, as it should. And I think that's the first step towards making Caleb Cunningham reconsider his way is for Mississippi State to win some ball games with an exciting brand of offense. Before we get out of here, I want to remind you guys, too, there's so much that's happening in the world today. And I had some people that reached out when I addressed like the assassination stuff. I don't necessarily want to talk about that because I don't want to talk about politics. But there's some things happening on social media that it shouldn't be a surprise. It's kind of like when keeping it real goes wrong. So kids, don't commit career suicide out there with the hot take, right? And my opinion is, I don't delete social media posts unless I make a typo or something. And I'll go back and just post it again. But if I say something on the show or I write something in an article, it is something that I absolutely believe. If I tweet something or post something on Facebook, it comes from my heart, and I'm never going to go back and delete it. That's just who I am. I'm also not going to go out there and post things that are untoward and really kind of disgusting and trashy. There are a lot of people that do that kind of stuff. I just, we talk about having a brand. Everybody has a brand, just some a little more cultivated than others. But don't get yourself in trouble. I'm being your friend here. Don't get yourself in trouble. And you see it. The mob is coming, right? And it's been, it's one of those deals where one side has the power for a while, and then they kind of control the narrative than another one does. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have strong and passionate opinions, but you better be careful how you present them. There are people out there committing career suicide really over silliness. And you've seen the fallout from it, right? I mean, it's like nowadays when you're in business, you cannot, nor should you, pick a side. It's like we talk about like Mississippi businesses. Like there are a lot of great businesses in Mississippi that are owned by Ole Miss people, and you never know. There are a lot of businesses owned by Mississippi State people, and really you'd never know. I mean, outside of the ones here in Starkville. I mean, right? I remember too when I first moved here, I like Crystal burgers. I do. Like when I'm traveling, if I see a Crystal, it's so easy to eat in the car, right? It's a hand food. It's easy, and I like them. I do. I like Crystal burgers. But so I went to the Crystal Burger here, and the Wi-Fi at the Starkville Crystal, the network was hotty-toddy. And I began to ask myself, why would somebody do that? Why would you set up a Wi-Fi in Starkville? Because like as soon as I go in and try to log in and I see that, the first thing that I said to myself, this is my last visit here. It's not only is it an Ole Miss business, and I do frequent some businesses that are owned by Ole Miss people, and sometimes it's unbeknownst to me, but somebody that would be that brash and try to rub it in our faces, you're going to be in Starkville, Mississippi, and do that, I can't do business with you, right? Because clearly you're a person that hates Mississippi State. And when you talk negatively of Mississippi State, you're talking negatively of me. And so I share that with you because it's so important. Business people are not going to support your political causes. Your employer is not going to support your political opinions. I'm not saying you shouldn't have them. You just got to be careful how you present them. You got to have some good sense about you. There's just so much of that nowadays, again, you can go on Twitter and Facebook and everything else, and there's just threads and threads and threads of people that, hey, here's so-and-so, they posted this, let's all go email or call their employer. And these things are happening, and people are losing their jobs. I don't want any of that to happen to you, ever. And so let's try to avoid controversy when we can. And listen, I'm a guy, they came for me, during all the Hugh Freeze stuff. They came for me, tried to get my wife fired at the hospital. They and I have so many of these emails too. Some people, Ole Miss people, sent, I would say, close to 80 or 90 emails to Scout, and then eventually to 247, trying to get me fired, which, they couldn't do. I'm going to cancel my subscription if you don't get rid of Steve Robertson. And if you recall, I never wrote any articles about the Hugh Freeze stuff on the network. And looking back on it, I probably should have. Probably would have made us some money because I was right and I was telling the truth. But there are people out there that will come for you for no good reason at all, and they do it under the cloak of anonymity. And that's one of the things that I have difficulty respecting, right? If I'm ever involved in anything, and if I come for you, you will know that I have come for you, right? That's just as simple as I can say it, because I want you to know. I can be a very vindictive and petty person, and it's not one of my better qualities. But sometimes you got to get on your hind legs and make some things happen. I understand that, but I don't like this whole cloak of anonymity. It's like, well, I can hide in secrecy, and because somebody doesn't agree with what I believe, that I can go and get those people fired. I think that is one of those things that is a negative in our culture. That understood, I believe in accountability, and I believe that everybody should get credit for everything they do. I have been held accountable for a lot of things that I've done, and some people have tried to hold me accountable for things that I didn't do. But I go back to a time in my life, and I had a discussion with somebody. This is long before any of this stuff happened. And I was in the retail business, and somebody came to me and said, hey, we've heard this and heard that. And I said, I'll tell you what, I said, I will answer questions to you about anything that you think I have ever done or ever will do, because I'm a person of integrity. That's not to say I hadn't made some mistakes along the way. I have. But don't go out there and put yourself and your ability to feed your family at risk, because it becomes a cascading effect, right? There's a lot of laws about HR and references and things like that, but nowadays everybody's going to go, they're going to go check out your social media. And if you're out there being like, you're being one of these people on lunatic fringe, I'm just going to tell you the job search is going to be long and arduous, because people just don't want to deal with that. Like, do I want to hire this person, have them representing me? I never know what they're going to do or say on social media. How will they be in the office workplace? How will they be in our little fishbowl? You got to be careful with all that stuff. And people think, well, I'm a real one. Well, you'll also be an unemployed one. And then you may be an unhireable one. That's the thing you got to think about. Discretion is the better part of valor. And, kind of knowing when to pick your battles, that's job one. All right, if you hadn't done so, go to DutyNobleBook.com and you can pre-order The Dude. It'll be out here in September. I'll get a date for you soon. We were hoping late for August, but I suspect it'll be in September and early September, mid-September. We'll let you know on the release date. But it'll be here soon, and we'll do some game day signings around the greater Starkville area. Of course, we'll do some things during the holidays around the state. We'll probably travel pretty extensively with this one. I didn't do so much with When the Bottom Falls, because as soon as I got done with that, we went right back in to write another book. And so I don't suspect that we'll do that the next time. But all of my sports titles are there. So if you need to get caught up, it's interesting. I'll meet people and say, hey, Steve, I read your book. Oh, which one? And, you wrote more than one. Yeah, well, yeah, it's number 7. And so we got a 5-year plan to get to 10. So we'll see what happens in 2025. But very proud of this book. I think every Mississippi State fan will enjoy this. Stories you've never heard before. With Dogpaw, I think everybody needs that too, just to kind of commemorate the moment. But The Dude, it's going to be some stories that you've never heard before. Some things that involve the university that you love. I think it's important too. And I always invite you to come float with us at True Rest of Starkville at 662-268-7601. Had a lot of Boneyard listeners here as of late that have come through and said, I was in town, or I made a plan. Had some ladies drive up from Madison as a group and came and floated with us. Just kind of made it a girls' day. And that's always great. You can speak directly to Dana. She'll answer any questions you have. She's a registered nurse, so she can answer things a little more technical than I can. But we look forward to you coming and floating with us. If you're a person that struggles with chronic pain, anxiety, or stress, we may be able to help you. There are a lot of other people that have said, I've never had anything like this in my life. Where has this been? And you think you know, but you don't. I encourage you to go to TrueRest.com. You can get more information. If you have questions specific, you can call Dana at 662-268-7601. Always follow us on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok as well. And you just never know what I'm going to do with that TikTok channel. You never know. you may have a viral video. I may come out with my black and white polka dot pants and make something happen. You just never know. But that's it for today. Hey, you guys have a great weekend. We'll come back on Monday, and we'll kind of update you on where things stand with the Major League Baseball draftees. Suspect we'll start getting some information early next week. And, of course, some portal action out there, too. So didn't know baseball today, but we'll have plenty for you on Monday. And pretty soon that'll kind of be behind us for a little while until we get into fall ball. But it's fixing to be football only around here. And I know you guys are excited for that, eager to see what Jeff Lebig and the staff can put on the field this fall. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.